Good Friday. Today we just experienced St. John's account of the passion and death of Jesus Christ through the beautiful voices of our cantors. These events are emotionally difficult to hear and imagine. And yet, as difficult as it is, we still call this day that Jesus died good. Have you ever wondered why we call it Good Friday? My name is Judy Reilly. Over this last week, I've been reflecting on the story of Jesus' death. And I took time to notice where Jesus has been present in my life. I began to see that his death isn't just an isolated event that happened 2,000 years ago. His death matters to me right now. What Jesus did on the cross made a difference in my life. It's given me hope and peace. And that's why it's Good Friday. But I didn't always see it this way. I'd like to share with you how God has been gently carrying me through this understanding of good. And hopefully it will help you feel this peace and hope in your heart, knowing how much you matter to God and that you are never alone. I've always loved Holy Week. It was such an important part of my childhood. Good Friday was especially a sacred day to my parents. In sharing about Jesus' death, my mom would explain to us 6 kids how no one stood up for Jesus, how he was betrayed, and how everyone left him at the end, even his closest friends, because they were all afraid. It left an impression on us. As kids, we could relate to being rejected by our friends and being lonely when they all left us. My brother Jack is a year younger than I am, and we had our typical sibling rivalries, but for the most part, we were and we are very close. Jack and I would be sad when Mom told us that Jesus was pretty much all alone when he died. "We'll stay with you, Jesus," we'd say. So through our middle school years, each Good Friday, we'd jump on our bikes and we'd ride over a mile up to church to be with Jesus. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, we would kneel and pray. Then we'd jump on our bikes and we'd head back home. At this point in my life, I had no concept of why it was Good Friday, or even that Jesus died for me. I just felt sad for him because his friends left him alone, betrayed and rejected, and that he died. And this is pretty much where my faith stayed through my young adulthood. I had no understanding that Jesus' death could be important to me. Fast forward into my late 30s, when for various reasons I wandered away from the church. Then a number of years later, through the accompaniment of a good friend, Sue, I decided to go back to a Catholic Mass. And because Holy Week meant so much to me when I was young, I chose to attend the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday in March of 2005. And as I participated in that Holy Thursday Mass, Jesus flooded my heart with his spirit of love. I was overwhelmed with treasured memories of the anticipation, the wonder, and the mystery of journeying with my parents and siblings through Holy Week. Jesus was wooing me back, and gradually I returned to him in his church. It was at this time that I began more deeply exploring my faith here at St. Francis. I was introduced to the greatest story of all, God's love story. And I started to see where God's love story and my story are connected. I began to see what God did for me and for you. That God created us out of love, and He has a purpose for us to spend eternity with Him. But how very early on sin and death entered the world, enslaving us and separating us from God. And this separation, this chasm, was so deep that there was nothing that we could do on our own to get back to Him. So, God sent His only Son, Jesus, on a rescue mission. Jesus, fully divine and fully human, came to go to war for me by dying on the cross to free me from sin and death. And Jesus won. By His victory over sin and death, He created that bridge for me to walk back into my Father's loving arms. Jesus rescued me. Jesus rescued you. I matter that much to God. And I hope you too can see how much you matter to God. Realizing this changed my whole perspective on life. It gave me hope, the unshakable confidence that death, anxiety, fear, depression, rejection has no power over me because Jesus rescued me. And okay, this is the good news. This is why it's Good Friday. So fast forward again to 2 years ago, the most challenging point in my life so far. This very week in 2019, I was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. I had major surgery on April the 4th, and I started 24 weeks of oral chemotherapy. And the chemo affected the palms of my hands and the soles of my feet. And after about 18 weeks, I could no longer hold on to things, and it became very difficult for me to walk. I remember struggling at this time, and through my honest talks with God, I realized that Jesus was inviting me into a yet deeper understanding of Good Friday. A Catholic theologian and priest, Richard Rohr, writes, God uses the very thing that would normally destroy us, the tragic, the sorrowful, the painful, the unjust, to transform and enlighten you. And this is what God did with me. He took my pain and He worked with me to transform it. He was pointing me to a greater level of His love and presence that would come by gazing at His cross. You know, it's hard to explain, but in my prayer during this time, I felt like Jesus was telling me to look outward, to look to Him on the cross. It's like our reading from Hebrews was speaking to me. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has similarly been tested in every way. I began to draw strength and peace when I would look at the crucifix, knowing that Jesus understood exactly what I was going through. His poor hands and feet were tortured so much more than mine would ever be. I would gaze at Him on the cross and know that He understands physical pain, rejection, dark nights where He was left all by Himself. Some of the very things I was experiencing. You know, there's comfort in knowing that we are not alone in our struggles. And this is what Jesus did for me. Even when I couldn't pray, I would look at the crucifix or I'd hold a wooden cross in my hand and I'd feel His presence. and I knew I wasn't alone. And even though God didn't change my circumstances, I still had to finish my chemo and my radiation treatments. He filled my heart in a new way. Knowing that He knows what I'm going through, knowing that I could let go and trust Him, knowing that He would stay with me always, even in those dark nights, that filled me with warmth and peace and love. This, too, is the power of the cross. It transforms, and it is good. Yes, Jesus won my way back to God the Father by dying on the cross for me, and this is so good, the ultimate gift of self. But He also did something for me right now, in my ordinary, everyday circumstances. I'm able to gaze upon Jesus on the cross and receive His grace, the strength that comes from knowing that He is with me and He is forever united to me. I'm never alone. Our reading from Hebrews today also invited us to confidently approach the throne of grace to receive mercy and find grace for timely help. The cross is my throne of grace, my strength, and it is good. In my journey over the last 2 years, this is the new meaning of good and Good Friday. When you're facing challenges, try lifting your eyes outward to Jesus. Gaze at Him upon the cross. Try to see that He does understand your pain, your rejection, your betrayal, and that you are never alone. He is patient. He is always waiting for you to talk to Him.